And we're back, just jumping straight into it.
That's right. I believe you had a question you would like to start us off with.
How is marriage going?
Well, marriage is fun. One of my favorite activities, probably my favorite activity right now in all of life, is the activity of feeling my son move. Like, isn't that the most amazing thing?
I thought it was pretty cool.
Like, just having my hand there and just feeling him kick or punch or move or elbow or whatever body movement that is, it is cool. It's cool to seeing him or seeing the stomach move, feeling him move. And I've probably talked enough about enjoying different moments and seasons. Like I've preached that sermon, that lesson in my personal life in different settings so many times, but to be in a really unique window of time. Again, we got 3 months, and I'm never going to be able to feel him from inside my wife again, and it's just really, really special. And I do feel like, so you've heard the phrase how people along the way have used this idea, don't have a kid to save your marriage or to save your relationship.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was stupid. And I still do think that's stupid.
Yeah.
But
of course.
I was like, I can, before maybe I would have had 100% stupid, 0% value.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I can see how going through the experience of my son growing and developing inside my wife is so special, and it bonds us so much as just me. I mean, pretty much, you just imagine, before going through the pregnancy experience, I wasn't like hanging out with my hand on my wife's stomach ever. Like that really wasn't a position I would put my hand. Yeah, whether I'm holding her hand or whether grabbing her leg or whatever. Those, again, our arm around her, those are all places that I would put my hand, but it's just a really unique season of time where it's like the most intimate. I was telling her this yesterday. I was like, man, you know how like intimately connected I feel with you, just having my hand here and feeling my son move, like just a crazy intimate experience. And I'm grateful to go through it. Yeah.
Wow.
So the answer to your question is I think it's going great. And if I just shift the conversation
to how the pregnancy is going?
To how it's going, but back to how crazy I thought that anybody would want to get pregnant to help their marriage get stronger or to stay or whatever. I go, I can see that. No, I wouldn't go 50-50, like it's like 50% less stupid, but maybe 70-30. But we still see having kids doesn't keep people in marriages.
No.
I still 100% don't believe that it's solving any kind of issues on that side.
Yeah, no. Causing more problems.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I'm always hesitant to ask somebody about their marriage. Would you like to share? You don't have to share anything like bad. How about this? What is your favorite thing about marriage right now? See, I asked you on the good side instead of how is it in general. What are your favorite things about marriage right now?
Right now, I feel like at least I'm trying to get like more friendly, like be more friends, than constantly putting pressure on like our relationship. I think it's gotten kind of easy to forget that, I do appreciate the kind of person that my husband is. I do like him and I respect his opinion. So it's like sometimes I forget that when I feel like I want us to be on the same page all the time, because I feel like, we're married. We're supposed to be one person. We're supposed to, not one person, but, we're supposed to be like on the same wavelength. And I feel like a lot of times when we're not, I get annoyed because I feel like, that's what we're supposed to be doing. But instead, like right now, I'm trying to take it back and say, okay, if I can separate like, the relationship part, like we don't always have to be either, sometimes we butt heads, and then sometimes we're like super close to each other, but we don't always have like an in between where we're just like friends and we're chilling and having a good time and like trying to enjoy just, talking.
Yeah.
So I think right now we're, at least I'm trying to. I don't even know if I've talked to Jeremy about it. I think I'm just making my own decisions all by myself in my head over here, like I always do.
Well, there's agency and there's autonomy in each one of us that we get a chance to make decisions about things. For whatever reason, I was thinking about this past week, which was, it's interesting because often when I'm in a mentoring setting with a married man, probably 95% of the time, maybe even higher than that, I'm only talking to the man side of the marriage, and it does
Yes.
very, very little actually to help his wife to become better or her become better behaviorally. As far as any advice I give, like any advice any advice somebody gives to a person that about what their significant others should be doing, it often ends up being toxic because you just end up a little bit more entitled, a little bit more bitter, a little bit more resentful about it. So all of that to say is I was thinking about this idea of toxic communication, which there's a lot of it. Like toxic communication, it could be something as simple as criticizing the other person, whether it's how they look or what they do, or something that's backhanded compliments. It's like, oh, thanks for actually taking the trash out today.
Yeah.
Actually, all of a sudden makes it a backhanded. It's a recognition of it usually isn't taken out, but you actually took it out today, right? Or it's commands. It's give me that, or it's wash those dishes, or whatever. Like again, commands aren't bad in and of themselves, but in a relationship as opposed to a request. Oh,
Yeah.
will you? I remember reading that in the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus books. Anyway, all of that to say, I was thinking back to what you're saying about the value and benefit of making decisions on one side of the relationship is not for nothing, because let's say if two people are in toxic communication, they're both contributing toxically to the interaction that they have. And let's say that's kind of like them drinking from one glass of water, but then both pouring poison into it. Pretty toxic. But if one person actually decides, you know what, I'm not going to contribute poison. Let's say the other person still is. Well, half poison is better than full, than double the poison. So there's something valuable to improve even on one side of the relationship, because if nothing else, even if it's just being less toxic, it's half the poison that normally is in there.
Yeah.
If it's 50-50.
Yeah.
So all that to say is I think there's something valuable for you to be making decisions on your side.
Yeah.
Of course, it's beneficial to go back and talk about things.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I think that's where I'm at right now. I'm just trying to be more friendly.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's hard because I'm pregnant. So, a lot of the times I just want to be lazy and not do anything and yell at everybody.
Yeah.
But I have to reel myself back in.
Do you think you'll ever in your pregnancy, assuming we keep doing the pod and you keep coming in, do you think your emotions will ever be displayed in a maybe humorous, maybe even toxic manner?
Possibly.
On the pod?
Quite possibly. Oh, speaking of, I gave you my login for the thing, right? So I had a dream. I think I had a dream about it, that you had found out the gender. And I was like, oh, yay.
You want to know what I know?
Yeah.
I don't know yet. I checked it last night.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to take at least 10 days. So
yeah.
If it was Friday, at least until Monday or something.
Yes.
So we're hoping for a healthy baby.
I forget, are you 50-50 or you have any leanings?
Oh, I'm not really leaning one way or the other, but like I have said, we do have a girl name picked out, and I feel like it's gonna be a boy, and I think Jeremy kind of thinks it's gonna be a boy, but I think Jeremy wants a girl. I think maybe because he wants to get to the boy, girl, get it out of the way and be done. I feel like either way, we can just have two and be done.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Yeah, I start thinking about it, and especially our conversation about like how many kids you need to have. You said 4, right? You'd have 4 kids to continue your bloodline or whatever.
4 is a safe amount to replicate and reproduce in society, the population.
Yeah, so that's also been on my mind too. But
Was it? I'm trying to think. Is it 3 or 4?
I'm sure it was 4. It was
Okay.
to me in my mind. It's either 4 or 5.
Okay, yeah, and it definitely wasn't 5. It was either 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I think
so
it
I'm
was
thinking 4.
4. But yeah, because of early deaths. Yeah, it has to be 4.
4.
To safely reproduce in a society where the population is continuing to last.
But that's like mathematically. A lot of times people have 5 kids and all of their kids don't have kids, or
Yeah.
you have 1 and then that one child has 7 kids. Stuff like that.
Yes. Okay, you said something I wanted to ask about. What was it? Okay. Last week you did mention this idea of your personality, and sometimes you could think through, you think ahead and project what somebody might be offended by, what their trigger might be, and then think through. And I find myself thinking that when it comes to parents or potential parents with the kids, and it's almost like they're almost thinking about, oh no, one day my future son will see me on a podcast wishing I had a daughter, and then oh no, all triggered because my
Yeah.
mom didn't even want the gender I ended up as
Yeah.
a boy or girl, whatever one they chose. So is there any of that in you, or you're like you genuinely before God in the solace of your soul, just said solace, in the singleness of your soul, all by yourself in the middle of nowhere, you're 100% 50-50, or there might be something else in there?
There might be something else in there. It's whatever you are, child.
Not, I'm saying in your own desires. So sometimes
No.
I feel like the 50-50 answer to me is like, I always, maybe it's just my own projection, which is like, just have a preference.
Yeah.
Just have one. Like, no, I mean, again, I don't know any kids that are like, oh no, my mom really wanted a boy and now I'm a miserable failure, loser in life, and now I hate my mom and hate everybody. Like, what? Your mom can have a preference and you cannot be the preference, and that's okay.
Have you not seen those like videos where the dads find out they're having girls and then they're so sad? Like, they're like at the gender reveal and the dad's all like mad face, like upset. Have you seen those?
I've seen. I actually have a friend whose husband was like that because they had a girl first and then they had a girl again, and he was definitely like head down. But so maybe I'm projecting because I'm going. If I found out that my mom and dad wanted to have a girl instead of me, to me that's not computed whatsoever as I'm less loved. I have enough evidence to go love. Like, I don't need to have been a girl to be like, okay, now I'm really loved.
Yeah.
So then again, that might be me in my.
I think that's again back to the whole like confidence in yourself thing.
And maybe
Like-
it's mindset too, because it's like
Yeah, like, I
it's
think that's
people
mindset.
who look for evidence of something, they usually just find it. So if you are looking for evidence to be insecure, I think
Yeah.
you're gonna find it. If you're looking for evidence to be secure and confident, like, so for me, it's like I have irrefutable evidence to believe that I'm loved, and I don't even think about things that might prove that I'm not as loved.
That makes sense. My thoughts. Yeah. I don't ever think like, oh, maybe. I don't know. I guess you're right. You can definitely find any evidence for anything. Like it. I mean, I don't know if everybody's done this in school or at any point in time, but whenever you're gonna do something and you like sign up to do like a debate, you have to do research on why something is, and somebody else does it why it isn't. And even if you don't get to pick per se what you're arguing, you can always find research. You can always find things that support your claim.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yes.
So I think it's the same thing, same concept. Like in just if you feel a certain way about something, it can be the same in your life. You're looking for reasons, and it's the same thing about being grateful about things, feeling blessed or feeling cursed. If you feel like you're cursed all the time, you're gonna find reasons that you seem like you are, or if you think that you're blessed all the time, you're gonna find reasons that make it feel like you are.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Definitely think it's mindset.
Yeah. So do you mentioned off the air in a situation that we won't discuss on air, but we mentioned this idea of like you're shifting your thought process on even memories.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you find, so for me doing that, it lowered so much of my stress because again, when you think like I have to cite this moment that it cannot even be proven. Again, it's something that can't, we will not have the receipts to it. And then, but then to go, oh, like, does it matter? And then we could just fast forward to the end. So anyway, I'm curious if even in as you shifted your perspective, have you noticed any relief of some of the pressure or stress?
Yeah, I definitely feel like that. And I think that's also going back to what I'm saying about how I'm trying to be more friends with Jeremy right now. Like I'm trying to not think so hard about how I'm remembering things, like, oh, did something specifically happen this way? Like I'm trying to open myself up for, we don't have to stick to things being remembered a specific way or, stuff like that. Because I don't always remember what I say. I don't remember what he says. And it's, it goes back to exactly what we were talking about. I feel like it does put so much pressure when you try to just remember things when you can just get clarification.
Yes.
So it's like if I feel like Jeremy was doing something and that's how my memory serves, I can just ask him. Like, is this what you were trying to, And I feel like that takes away so much of the me getting in my head, going crazy, like I normally do.
Yeah.
And it takes that and it's like, okay, instead of me going crazy and acting like this and that, instead I'm going to go and try to tell myself, okay, it's not that serious. Like, just ask him. And if he, still has the same opinion, that's something we can talk about right then and there.
Yeah.
And get out in the open rather than me having my own assumptions and bringing it up as if what I believe is fact.
Right. Yes. That and this idea of one of the favorite questions that some of our close friends from Oklahoma had taught us, which was asking the question, "Hey, what did you hear from me?" Now that's what that does is it pauses you from saying, "Hey, I said this," which actually, from an audience perspective and a speaker perspective, it actually doesn't matter what you think you said as speaker. It only matters what hearer heard. And again, hearers create, like, again, as a communicator and as somebody who records my speeches and records the podcast, it's amazing how people can hear things that I go, there's no way I said that, and I have video. I can go back to it and go, no, but the idea of, oh no, hey, what did you, like, it's almost like saying, what do you think that I said?
Yeah.
I thought, again, if we're not going to argue about the past, I thought I said this, but what did you hear? And it's just refreshing to know I've been wrong. I thought I said one thing. I thought I called somebody one name and I said another name and they brought it up to me later. Like, oh, wow. Like, that's crazy that I would even call you that. And there's no point of arguing it. Oh, I called Brian David. Oh, why did I do that? I don't know. Sorry. You know what I'm saying? And we move on. So all of that to say... Yep. Clarification. Just getting the clarification. You brought up getting clarification. If somebody said something, what did you mean by that?
Yeah.
Or if they are trying to do something in response to what you said, and you ask them, what did you hear?
Yeah.
And it gives you an opportunity to live life in their world for a moment.
Yeah. Yes. Even something small like sometimes I think I'm just going in autopilot, and like Jeremy's like, what did you say that place was called again? Animal, what? And I was like, and I don't even think I was paying attention to what he was saying. And I was like, it's called like Southwest Animal Clinic, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, Southwest? And then I was like, no, I didn't say that. I said East or something like that. And then it was like, he's like, no, you said West. And I was like, oh, maybe I did say West. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure. Just look up South Animal Clinic.
Yes.
Like,
so when people, again, the analytical person in me is when I start hearing maybes and probablys, I feel so much safer in conversations.
Yeah.
And I said this to you probably on the pod and elsewhere as well, is when people speak too confidently about the past, I'm going, either they don't know the research that again, like there's instances, and this is kind of interesting too, like there was a wave back in, I think, the 80s and 90s when, what is that form of therapy when they kind of
Pendulum?
hypnotism?
Yeah.
But it's the pendulum. Yeah. So the idea is we're gonna put you in this hypnotic state, and you're gonna recall memories that you can't recall on your own.
Yeah.
And then so like there was this wave and this movement of of movies showcasing it, shows showcasing it, and then even in real life, they found a whole bunch of kids who had dug up these post-traumatic memories of being abused. And then so like, but what they found out is similar to the movie Inception. You've seen Inception?
Yeah.
And it's this idea of how easy it is to plant a memory in somebody else's mind that they actually didn't experience. But when you probe them a certain way and you ask them a certain way, then all of a sudden what happens is they remember things that never actually happened to them. So they literally put parents in prison because of this, again, this model of that was helping the kids to recall how they were abused as kids when they never actually were.
Whoa.
So it's just, anyway, all that to say is, so what I find as I interact with more intellectual people, there's more qualifiers of probably or maybe or some, not all. Again, the absolute language kind of goes away.
Yeah.
And then the more, it's called qualified language or quality, saying maybe or I don't know. What I remember from that is this: they're qualifying their statement, saying what I remember, knowing that what they remember could be false. So then I'm just like mentally triggered by people who don't do that, and I pick up on it right away. I'm like, oh, okay. Does anybody else see the tactic that they're maybe overcompensating for? They could be overcompensating. Maybe they could do, maybe it's something else. But does anybody else see this? Or nobody else is? Okay, cool.
Everybody's just gonna drink the Kool-Aid.
Right. So
yeah, I think it's lifted weight off my shoulders. At the same time, like sometimes, like even mom's having conversations with me, or Jeremy's having conversations with me, or I'm just having conversations day to day, like with my friends or in general, and people are talking about how things are going on and they're doing this because they don't remember one thing or another. And it's like I've just gotten to the point where it's like it really doesn't matter. Whatever you think in the past happened, whatever you don't think happened, whatever anything, I don't care. One, I don't care. Two, you just move from here forward. You know, like sometimes I feel like people struggle because they're making decisions and they're like, well, I don't know how I got here, and they're trying to figure it out or trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. And like, if you're figuring it out, that's great, but it's not perfect. Your thoughts, whatever you're uncovering, it might not be perfect. So ideally, what you want to do is just try to figure out where you're at and move forward from there.
Yes.
So I think it's made me so less like stressful, like about even just like, having conversations and like, oh, well, in the past, like I've had this problem and this problem, and it's like, okay, well, let it go.
Yeah.
Like, and even if other people are not letting it go, I don't let myself get pressed about other things, because I know, especially when something's offending to you or when something hurts your feelings or when you're upset about something, sometimes your memories on those things can be over exaggerated. And to me, it's like, if that's how you feel about it, of course how you feel about what you think you remember is valid. And if that's how you want to feel, that's fine. But to put like the blame on other people, like, you made me feel like this, you did this to me, like, you can't control other people, you can control yourself.
Right.
So I feel like it doesn't stress me out as much hearing people like complain about things, because I'm like, really, what can you do?
And having been in so many religious debates too, it's like one example I often think of is the preacher who's on stage telling them how God spoke to him. Tells them, or even people who are not preachers, but people who learn from those preachers and kind of do it themselves. And in my skeptic brain, I'm like, did God really speak to you, or did you just kind of think you hearing from God? And of all the mysteries God could be revealing to you, He only told you that. He didn't tell you everything else. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's all these ideas, or somebody said, oh, God told me that Trump was going to win in 2020, and Trump didn't win. But then did he win? But then it's kind of like, well, God knew he should have won because the election was rigged, so God was still right in telling me. And it's like, wait, what is going on? But to your point about, like, does it really matter? And there's absolutely these YouTubers who are like heresy hunters, and they're hunting out people who teach false things, and they believe it's their responsibility before God to warn everybody about these wolves in sheep's clothing who are corrupting the world and who are lying and deceiving the people and who are doing all of this bad. And so their responsibility is to call them out and expose them. So anyway, but it's like all of that goes, oh, so I don't have to be the person, for me, who's calling out the heresy, who the preacher who says he hears directly from God about relatively non-important things. And then I don't have to be the guy. Or if somebody believes something that I find as false according to the scriptures, I don't have to be the guy who modifies their thoughts or modifies their beliefs. And that's also refreshing, going, okay, all right, I don't got to do that. And then interestingly, as I made that shift, I find more people actually want direction. I'm like, oh, you actually want me to like plant a seed? Like before, I felt like I was so focused on like uprooting all these things that people have planted. Okay, hey, I'm not gonna uproot anymore. So whatever. The Keanu Reeves quote, I think, has been going on my algorithm, at least in my Twitter, which is like, the quote is something to the effect of, he's gotten to the point in life where he doesn't engage in arguments at all. So literally, if somebody says 1 + 1 is 5, he just lets him believe it and goes, you're right, and he moves on. And I go, there's something to that I go, oh, there's a vibe to it that makes sense to me.
It's also funny, like, as you're saying that, I don't remember if it was you who said it, or at some point in time, somebody said that when you're talking to somebody, depending on the state of their like willingness to accept, if you're trying to plant seeds, you can't plant seeds in concrete.
Yes.
You plant seeds in soil. So like if somebody's not ready, like trying to plant a seed, like let's say in their brain is concrete right now. You can't plant a seed there, but you have to wait for like the right time, the right moment to have those conversations with somebody to plant the seed at the right time. And especially if you believe like things happen, you know, how they're supposed to happen, and you know, whatever you believe, like you have to understand and trust that the right person's going to say the right thing at the right time to someone to change their mind. Like you trying to constantly like, and that's another thing too, like when people are talking to me and complaining and stuff like that, I've gotten to the point where I'm not constantly trying to convince them to do something else, because I feel like this person's mind is concrete right now. You know, I can try to like plant these seeds, and when they're ready, they can come back and talk to me about it, or I can just, you know, sit here and listen. You know, so I feel like I've gotten into that position with some of my friends where they're like complaining about their relationships and they're like mad. And then I'm like, okay, well, you know, I'll tell them for months or years, like, you know what the problem is? Like, you know what it is? Like, just leave, or just fix it, or just stop, supplying this, or stop enabling that. And they don't listen. And it's like, I can either get frustrated by that, or I can just understand that, like, I've said my piece once.
Yeah.
And if they want advice about that, or they want to know something about that, they're more than welcome to come back and ask me. But as of now, I don't have to go out of my way to try to convince someone to believe or to see my perspective on things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. Yes, I am similar. When I was young, I would say something a lot more stupid, which was like this. I would say, when you're ready to be wrong, let me know. Until then, we'll talk later. Which probably is not helping them at all to want to be inspired to be humble and to listen and to shift perspective.
Yeah.
But no, power to you for all of that. And I think it's interesting, even doing the pod with you. It's interesting, like, and I think you'll see this as you get older and you have different wisdom and you talk to younger people, and there's different things that they think, and you're like, like, I wish they could know this, what I know, but the route for them getting to know it might be different than me just teaching them. So there's something to that as well. Of like, there's a quote in one of John Maxwell's books where he talks about, like, you only get answers to questions you ask. So if you imagined that truth, there's certain people that have had answers that actually really, really help me in my life, but they'll only tell me them if I ask. And there's certain questions for you.
Yeah.
There was certain truths that you will only get if you ask. And it's not just anybody. You have to ask the right person the right question to get the right answer.
Yep.
Yes.
But yeah. And I feel like, for the most part, things work themselves out. Like, not necessarily like everything's going to be perfect, but I do feel like, I have had some friends who I, for lack of a better term, I was like annoyed with some of the decisions that they make or whatever. Not to say that a lot of my friends were definitely annoyed when I was making bad decisions.
Sure.
So it's like, I tell myself to be more like graceful and not so mean.
Yeah.
And like, it's like giving them room to be comfortable to come to me and talk to me when they finally make their own decision and like ask me, okay, like, I've done this. Now, if I do this, are you gonna, are you still gonna be there to support me? Or if I, and it's like, like, everybody comes to their own terms at their own times.
Yeah.
And I think especially like talking to the right people helps.
Yes. It's interesting. I appreciate you talking about the idea of being gracious. It's a wrestling match I can have, especially with masculinity, with accountability, with responsibility. And I think there's a balance there. I can't imagine how it is raising girls, but I know some of my friends who are raising girls are trying to raise them with accountability, responsibility, and this toughness. And what I say by that is, like, for example, I did make a video last night because somebody had asked me on TikTok. They said, how was your relationship with your dad? They asked me in a comment in response to a video I had made about how excited I was to have my son and my son bonding with my wife. Like, I just can't wait to see that. And I said that and communicated it, and then one of the comments on TikTok was, how was your relationship with your dad? And which wasn't really relevant to the video because I was talking about my son with my wife and them bonding as mother and son. And I always appreciate the relationship I had with my mom. So he asked me about that. So I said, okay, I'll go to make a video and respond to his comment. But it's interesting because my memory of my dad, if you took the highlight reel of memories, it would look like it was awesome. So I remember I was thinking last night as I was making the video and I was, kind of scripting it out and kind of writing down what my true perspective was as best as I can remember, right, from a memory perspective. And it was like bowling, we went bike riding, kite flying, fireworks, going to the park, going to the flea market, going to the corner store, going to the toy store. It was playing darts, playing basketball, watching basketball, throwing the football. It was, so like, there's like all of these activities. And so from one angle, it's like, oh, dang, like he had his dad was really active in his life. But it's like across 17 years, that might have been like 17 times, period. And the reality of that was so then there's these precious, gracious memories I have of, dang, like he was the most fun guy on the planet. Like, looking back, he was very present in one context. He was present as far as he was in the moment. Of course, there weren't phones back then, but it was like very immersed in having a good time, being active when he was here. But the vast majority of the time, he just wasn't present. Again, he missed most of my birthdays, most of my holidays, most of my games. I think he went to one of my basketball games of the hundreds of games that I probably had growing up. So the idea of being gracious, but also being a person who wants to be real and accountable and responsible. It's and both. Like, do I have good memories of my dad? For sure. But do I think he was not a good dad? I also think he was not. And and anybody who would call him a good man, I don't see how a good man categorically could be the same as someone who dramatically neglects his children. So if those two things are true, if we say everybody's a good man, if this category, they're all good people, I was like, how could we call a man who neglects his children a good man? Like, I couldn't use that definition of good for him, which is a hard truth. And it's a hard truth I would have man to man with people. And I feel like I would be more hesitant to have the conversation with other women. But if I was talking to an identical situation with a friend of mine who is a dad who dramatically neglects his children, I would say, you're not a good man to man. As far as trying to call him higher and call him upward. But the idea of having that conversation with any woman is like, there's absolutely a hesitation, because I think like men need to be talked to like men, rougher around the edges, to be called into, a greatness. Mm-hmm. And not that women don't, but I wrestle mentally with the idea of being, what the Bible describes as the kindness of God and the sternness of God. Like, to me, sternness makes so much sense with other men. I wrestle with the idea of like what sternness looks like with women.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
It's so hard, especially nowadays, like being stern with women. Because I feel like there's so much like back and forth and in the airs all the time. Like, you want to be stern and help women understand certain things, but it's like, you still haven't watched the Barbie movie, right?
No, but I'm willing to.
So like, there's a part in the movie where she's saying, you have to be like, as a woman, you have to be gentle but not weak, be like this, something like that, along those lines. So it's like trying to be in the middle. And so I can see why it would be completely difficult, like, to try to be stern with a woman. But like, especially so, women are, there's bad moms too.
Sure,
there is some bad moms who go out and party and leave the kids for weeks at a time with their grandparents and don't come back. And when, they're always dating someone new and having more kids, it's like that happens all the time too. And it's like, are you sturdy with that person, or are you, stern with that person, or are you going out of your way to correct that behavior? And a lot of times I feel like whether you're stern with a man or a woman, sometimes they're going to make the decisions that they're going to make, and it's not going to change anything. Like, do I believe in my heart that everybody has the capacity to change? Yes. Do I believe that people will? I don't. I think that the ability to change is definitely there, but a lot of people will not change. Yeah. They're not going to make that decision. They're not going to change. They don't want to. So at this point, it's like, I'm trying to imagine it, like raising a daughter, right? Raising a daughter, and you don't want her to, like, I'm trying to come up with a scenario.
While you're thinking about it, I'll add something to it.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to think about it verbally, then I'll let you.
No, either way.
Well, I was thinking about like the idea of back to, because the golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a wrestling match. And what I say by that is, how do I want to be remembered? Like, if I took that and just wrote down ideas, clearly I've made mistakes. Clearly I've done great things. I've done both. Do I want to be remembered for my mistakes? I don't want to be remembered for my mistakes. But so then this idea, like back to this memory of my dad, right? Like, mercy is treating people better than what they deserve. So there's this wrestling match of mercy does mercy mean when I talk about him, I talk about only his good? Then there's this honest, and there's real, and there's authenticity with also being real about him being a bad person, which is again like so there's like, can you say that? And again, as a man, I would say that to his face. I would say it to another friend. I would say it if I just looked at just behaviors.
Yeah.
Behaviors of neglecting children, bad person, or scumbag, or whatever phrase you might want to use on it. But mercy does call me into this idea of treating people better than what they deserve. So maybe the person who was a master of mercy would look at my dad and go, what he did was special.
Like, you're happy about that?
I'm grateful for the memories that I have, the good memories that I have of him. But again, like, total evaluation would be like, nah. But is mercy treating people better, treating even his memory better than what I would say he deserves? Is mercy ultimately, is there a point where I become merciful enough to not talk about his shortcomings?
I also think about it like the question that you were asked, like, how is your relationship with your dad?
How was? It was a question. It was the verb, yeah. How was your relationship with your dad?
Okay, so that specific question, I do think it is important to include everything. Only because it's the person asking the question is trying to gain perspective on, like, is this a generational idea of, like, he's learned it from his dad and now, or is this breaking generational curses type of thing? So in my mind, that's, it would be important to talk about. But, like, as far as talking to your child, I'm always thinking about, like, what am I going to say to my son? Like, as he gets older, yeah, you're going to want to talk about the good things with your son. You're going to want to talk about the good things your dad did. And like, as he gets older, your son gets older, you're going to want to talk about the bad things. When he gets to that point and he's, like, getting upset with you or doing things to you, you're going to think, okay, I'm going to also bring this up to my son. Because, yes, while the good times that I had with my dad, I want my son to be happy about those things. I'm also going to bring up the bad things because once he gets to that age, it's probably not going to happen for 20 years. He's probably not going to. But when it comes to you establishing those things or you teaching your son how to be a father, you're going to tell him, I did things the way that I did them because, one, I know I've talked to you about the good relationship that I had with my father, but at the same time, I did those things because sometimes my dad wasn't there. And, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't like my dad. And you can aspire to be like me, but also, understand those other things, So I think it's definitely situational as to, like, when you're going to bring up those things and when you're not.
Yeah, that's good. It's one of my friends who has 2 daughters had told me about the idea of different pain from your past comes up so much as a dad. Like, he was talking about helping his daughter learn how to tie her shoes, and she's like, oh, did your dad teach you how to? And his dad was like similar to mine, like just absent. And like, it's such a simple, innocent question his daughter's asking about her grandpa. And he's like,
no, he was deadbeat. Nah, just kidding. But, like,
yeah, like,
you don't want to say that to your child.
There's pain associated with being better. And I try to capture that in the video because I was like, how is it that I'm like I've been more present for my nephews and nieces than my dad was for his sons and daughters, or his dad was, let's just say, for his son. And I always go like, it's interesting too, because I think that kind of puts me on the pedestal. But if I say that I'm actually saying, if I don't consider myself a good person, and I can still, even in this messed up version of me, be present over and over again. And so we just talk about the number of T-ball games I've been to, just one of my nieces, and just Mila's. Again, you could count times a bunch of other things. But if you just counted one, like I've probably been to like 50 more games than my dad ever been to mine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like just quantity. If you just talked about quantity, there is no comparison. I think there's a heartbreaking element, but I think the part that probably gets me emotional is thinking about how breaking the bad news to my son about his grandpa. I think it's a tough thing to
think about,
because like you in his world, again, my son's world, it's like blue skies and rainbow, blue skies and in beautiful mountaintops and all of these things. But like, and John Maxwell talks about it too. He said his dad had a horrible dad, and then so like that back to breaking the generational curse. It was like his dad was like, nah, like I'm not gonna be what my dad was to me with my son. And then it's cool seeing everything that he's achieving, and but it's like crazy to think about that and be in that real life
situation.
So the phrase "generation curse" is pretty common in our era, and I think it's noble to be talking about it. But it's real. It's real of going, I'm gonna be a part of breaking the generational curse. As long as it depends on me. Again, I could die tomorrow and he grows up without a father and he doesn't get any of this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he gets the books and he gets the podcast and that's all he gets. But as far as it depends on me, like I'm gonna be very, very involved. So
Yeah. So that's where we're at now.
Yes.
So I've thought. So like, let's even say you have a daughter. So going back to what we were talking about, you have a daughter and she's stealing all the time. And that's a problem. When you're going to talk to your daughter about it, I do think that women have to be stern with other women, but that's, I think, what, like as a mom, you have to be stern with your child. But it's hard because like, I think as a daughter, she's having a problem stealing.
Yeah.
Do you go and you talk to her and you're trying to like be, sometimes people just do that, and it's kind of like a kleptomaniac thing, you don't even need to, you could have the money and not need the money and you still go and you're stealing. So are you, when you're trying to be stern about this, like, is it something that you handle with like, obviously grounding, but is that stern? Like when you're saying stern, are you considering it like talking to someone bluntly?
Yeah.
Okay. I would think it's the same thing. Like you tell them if you continue doing that, you're going to go to jail.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I know somebody, but I won't say who. They stole something. They stole something when they were in kindergarten, and then their parents knew a cop, and they actually had him come and put him in handcuffs and put him in the back of the police car and drove him around the block. But again, did she ever steal again? She said no. Did it work? Can you argue with results?
I think that's not a bad idea, honestly. I do think, it's hard, like, what is it called? Beyond scared straight? You think that you can scare someone straight?
Well, there's been enough articles written that you go look it up, and people talk about how like the vast majority of it doesn't work. But it's an interesting premise because it's like, how much can fear play a role in helping somebody, and versus like
positive encouragement, or positive reinforcement.
Yeah. So like I think of like macro would be, the extremes of like punishment and reward is like heaven and hell. The next thing is like the punishment of death or the reward of, I don't know, I guess it could be reward of life, I suppose, like
a life sentence or execution.
No, the right side in this example is reward, benefits, blessings. This is heaven, hell. This is like death sentence. This is whatever. The reward of
Living to be old.
prosperity, or being rich and having the house or whatever. So like you have like these extremes on this line, but then it seems as though punishment is connected with fear, and fear doesn't work very well long term. And there's a reason. Again, even you look from a scriptural perspective, the scripture says that there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Fear has to do with punishment. There is no fear in love, which I think that's right. Like when love is mature, I'm not even talking about like love between man and woman, I'm talking about love in general. When it's mature, it's not based on punishment. It's not based on fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's something more. So I think love is the most powerful motivator in the world beyond just fear.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Podcast ago, you talked about doing a book club. And I was thinking about one of the most powerful books I've ever read, which is The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And I figured we could read the intro and chapter 1 on today's podcast, and maybe pick up on chapter 2 next time. Well, chapter 2, maybe for this one we'll read intro and chapter 1. The next time you'll have read it on your own. I'll read it on my own, and we'll just put up highlights. And if we can if there's anything's happening in the world or any like current events or even stuff on Reddit that's connected to the chapter, we can kind of tie that in.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
I think that's a great idea.
All right. I'll let you read the first 2 pages of the introduction, and then we'll discuss.
Introduction. Potential is one of the world's most wonderful words in any language. It looks forward with optimism. It is filled with hope. It promises success. It implies fulfillment. It hints at greatness. Potential is a word based on possibilities. Think about your potential as a human being and you get excited. At least, I hope you do. What a positive thought. I believe in your potential just as much as I believe in mine. Do you have potential? Absolutely. What about unfulfilled potential? That phrase is as negative as the word potential is positive. My friend Florence Lautner, a speaker and author, wrote a story in her book, Silver Boxes, about her father, who always wanted to be a singer but never was. She says he died with the music still inside of him. That's an apt description of unfulfilled potential. Not reaching your potential is like dying with the music still inside of you. Since you are reading these words, I believe you have the desire to reach your potential. So the question becomes, how do you do it? I have no doubt that the answer is growth. To reach your potential, you must grow. And to grow, you must be highly intentional about it. This book is an effort to help you learn how to grow and develop yourself, as you have the best chance of becoming the person you were created to be. My desire is to help you develop the right attitude, learn more about your strength, tap into your passion, become more in touch with your purpose, and develop your skills so that you can be all you can be. You may be aware that this is the 3rd book I've written. The first was developed to help leaders understand how leadership works so they can become better leaders. The second was to help people understand teamwork and develop stronger teams. This book is dedicated to helping you understand how potential growth works and to help you become a more effective and fulfilled individual. While it's true that I may include a few leadership insights along the way, you don't need to be a leader for this book to help you. You don't need to be a part of a team to grow, though it certainly helps. You just need to be a person who wants to grow and become better than you are today. What do I mean when I write about growth? What will be as unique as you are? To discover your purpose, you need to grow in self-awareness. To become a better human being, you need to grow in character. To advance in your career, you need to grow in your skills. To be a better spouse or parent, you need to grow in relationship. To reach your financial goals, you need to grow in your knowledge about how money works. To enrich your soul, you need to grow spiritually. The specifics of growth change from person to person, but the principles are the same for every person. This book offers laws that will teach you how to approach the worthy goal of growing. It is a key that unlocks the door. You will have to put in work to actually grow. My recommendation is that you tackle a chapter of this book every week. Discuss it with some friends, do the application exercises that are at the end of each chapter, keep a growth journal, and incorporate what you're learning into your everyday life. You cannot change your life until you change something you do every day. By learning the laws and living them, you will be on your way to reaching your potential. If you keep learning and growing every day, over the course of many years, you will be astounded by how far it will take you.
You have it.
Oh, okay. You have another one.
I do. Anything stand out about any of that?
Unfulfilled potential. No, sadness.
There's that quote that you read. It said, "Not reaching your potential was like dying with the music still inside of you."
Sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I saw somebody post something and they were like, my grandpa died when he was supposed to retire after he just bought a new RV to retire in. My dad and my mom just sold their RV that they were going to retire in because, you know, he has Alzheimer's or something like that. And then they're like, you know, whatever you want to do, you got to do it now, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
I was like, no wonder nobody's working nowadays.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's where we're at.
All right. Shall we dig into chapter 1?
Sure.
All right, I'll read the first parts. I'll read through
There's 15 pages.
the first 2 pages, and then we'll trade off. All right. Chapter 1, the law of intentionality. Growth doesn't just happen. Life is now in session. Are you present? Do you have a plan for your personal growth? Kurt Kampmeyer, the man who asked me the question, waited patiently for my response. It was a question that would change my life. I fumbled for answers. I listed my accomplishments from the previous years. I talked about how hard I worked. I outlined my goals. I explained the things I was doing to reach more people. All of my answers were based on activity, not on improving. Finally, I had to admit it. I had no plan to become better. It was something I had never considered before, and it exposed a major flaw in my approach to work and success. When I started my career, I was intentional about working, reaching my goals, and being successful. I had a strategy: hard work. I hoped that would get me where I wanted to go. But working hard doesn't guarantee success, and hope isn't a strategy. How do you get better at what you do? How do you improve your relationships? How do you gain more depth and wisdom as a person? How do you gain insight? How do you overcome obstacles? Work harder? Work longer? Wait for things to get better? That conversation happened over lunch at a Holiday Inn restaurant in 1972. At the time, I had just been given the opportunity to move up in my career. I had been offered the best church in my denomination. Think about being offered the top leadership job in the premier location in your company. That's what it was for me. The problem was that I was 24 years old. How old are you?
I'm 24.
I was in way over my head, and I knew that if I didn't rise to the occasion, I would fail spectacularly. Kurt was a salesman who was selling a growth kit, a year-long plan with materials designed to help a person grow. He slid the brochure across the table to me. It cost $799, which was nearly a month's salary for me at the time. My mind was racing as I drove home. I had believed that success would come to anyone who poured himself into his career. Kurt helped me to realize that the key was personal growth. It occurred to me that if you focus on goals, you may hit goals, but that it doesn't guarantee growth. If you focus on growth, you will grow and always hit goals. As I drove, a quote from James Allen's As a Man Thinketh came to mind. I had first read that book in 7th grade and had subsequently read it nearly a dozen times. Allen wrote, People are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. I couldn't afford what Kurt was offering, yet in my heart, I knew he had uncovered the key to the ability to meet my next leadership challenge and go to the higher levels in my career. I could see the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be, where I needed to be. It was a growth gap, and I needed to figure out how to bridge it. Anything stand out there?
My turn?
You can do growth gap traps. You can do number 1 and number 2, and I'll pick it up in number 3.
All right. Growth gap traps. If you have dreams, goals, or aspirations, you need to grow to achieve them. But if you're like I was, and if you're like most people, you have one or more mistaken beliefs that create a gap that keeps you from growing and reaching your potential. Take a look at the following 8 misconceptions about growth that may be holding you back from being as intentional as you need to be. The assumption gap. I assume that I will grow automatically. When we are children, our bodies automatically grow. A year goes by and we become taller, stronger, more capable of doing things and facing new challenges. I think many people carry into adulthood and subconsciously believe that mental, spiritual, and emotional growth follows a similar pattern. Time goes by and we simply get better. We, like Charlie Brown in Charlie Schultz's Peanuts comic strip, who once said, "I think I've discovered the secret of life. You just hang around until you get used to it." The problem is that we don't improve by simply living. We have to be intentional about it. Musician Bruce Springsteen commented, "A time comes when you need to stop waiting for the man you want to become and start becoming the man you want to be." No one improves by accident. Personal growth doesn't just happen on its own. And once you're done with your formal education, you must take complete ownership of the growth process, because nobody else will do it for you. As Michael de Montaigne observed, no wind favors him who has no destined port. If you want your life to improve, you must improve yourself. You must make that a tangible target. 2, the knowledge gap. I don't know how to grow. After my meeting with Kurt Kampmeyer, I talked to everybody I knew and asked the same question Kurt had asked me. Do you have a growth plan? I was hoping that somebody had figured this out and I could simply learn from him. Not one person said yes. Nobody in my world had a plan for growing and improving. I didn't know how to grow, and neither did they. Designer, artist, and consultant Loretta Staples says, "If you are clear with what you want, the world responds with clarity." I knew what I wanted. I wanted to grow into the new job I was taking. I wanted to become someone capable of accomplishing the big goals I had set for myself. I just needed a way to do that. For many people, learn from the school of hard knocks. Many people learn from the school of hard knocks. Difficult experiences teach them lessons the hard way, and they change sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. The lessons are random and difficult. It's much better to plan your growth intentionally. You decide where you need or want to grow, you choose what you will learn, and you follow through with discipline, going at a pace you set. After I met with Kurt and came to realize that I didn't know anyone else who could help me, my wife Margaret and I talked about ways we could scrimp, save, and go without to put aside $799. You have to remember that this was before credit cards. I skipped lunches. We canceled the vacation we had planned to take. We made do. It took us 6 months, but we finally did it. You can imagine my excitement as I opened up the growth kit and started flipping through the 5 areas it covered: attitude, goals, discipline, measurement, and consistency. I look back now and I can see how basic those things were that the kit taught me. But that's what I needed. Learning those lessons opened the door to personal growth, a crack for me. And through that crack, I began to see growth opportunities everywhere. My world began to open up. I accomplished more. I learned more. I was able to lead and help others more. Other opportunities began to present themselves. My world expanded outside of my faith. The decision to grow has impacted my life more than any other.
All right. Number 3, the timing gap. It's not the right time to begin. When I was a kid, one of my father's favorite riddles to us went like this. 5 frogs are sitting on a log. 4 decide to jump off. How many are left? The first time he asked me, he answered 1. No, he responded 5. Why? Because there's a difference between deciding and doing. That was a point that Dad often drove home with us. American politician Frank Clark said, what great accomplishments we'd have in the world if everybody had done what they intended to do. Most people don't act as quickly as they should on things. They find themselves subject to the law of diminishing intent, which says the longer you wait to do something that you should do now, the greater the odds that you will never actually do it. Back when I was deciding whether to try and buy that first personal growth plan, in a way I was lucky because I knew I was headed to a job where I would be in way over my head. I would be challenged beyond anything I'd ever done before. I would be under a microscope with high expectations, some for me to succeed, some for me to fail, from everyone who knew me. And I knew that if I didn't get better as a leader, I would fail. That prompted me to act as quickly as I could. You may be under similar personal or professional pressure right now. If you are, you're probably anxious to start growing and developing. But what if you're not? Whether you feel prompted to or not, now is the time to start growing. Author and professor Leo Buscaglia asserted, life lived for tomorrow will always be a day away from being realized. The reality is that you will never get much done unless you go ahead and do it before you are ready. If you're not already intentionally growing, you need to get started today. If you don't, you may reach some goals, which you can celebrate, but you will eventually plateau. Once you start growing intentionally, you can keep growing and keep asking what's next. Number 4, the mistake gap. I'm afraid of making mistakes. Growing can be a messy business. It means admitting you don't have the answers. It requires making mistakes. It can make you look foolish. Most people don't enjoy that, but that is the price of admission if you want to improve. Years ago, I read a quote by Robert H. Schuller who said, what would you attempt to do if you knew you wouldn't fail? Those words encouraged me to try things that I believed were beyond my capabilities. They also inspired me to write the book Failing Forward. When I received the first copy of that book from the publisher, I immediately wrote a thank you in it to Dr. Schuller and signed it to him. And I made a trip to Garden Grove so I could present it to him and thank him for the positive influence he had in my life. A photograph that was taken of us on that day sits on my desk in my office as a reminder of his investment in me. If you want to grow, you need to get over any fear you may have of making mistakes. As author and professor Warren Bennis asserts, a mistake is simply another way of doing things. To become intentional about growing, expect to make mistakes every day and welcome them as a sign you are moving in the right direction. All right, go ahead.
The perfection gap. I have to find the best way before I start. Similar to the mistake gap is the perfection gap. The desire to find the best way to get started in a growth plan. When Kurt presented me with the idea of a growth plan, I went looking for the best way. But what I discovered is that I had it backwards. I had to get started if I wanted to find the best way. It's similar to driving on an unfamiliar road at night. Ideally, you'd like to be able to see your whole route before you begin, but you see it progressively as you move forward. A little more of the road is revealed to you. If you want to see more of the way, then get moving. 6. The inspiration gap. I don't feel like doing it. Many years ago, I was stuck in a doctor's waiting room for a really long time. So long, in fact, that I had completed all the work I'd brought with me for the wait and was looking for something productive to do. I flipped through a medical journal and found the following text, which has become one of my favorite examples of the inertia of motivation. And by the way, this was before Nike coined the phrase. Just do it. We hear it almost every day. Sigh, sigh, sigh. I can't just get myself motivated, lose weight, test my blood sugar, etc. And we hear an equal number of signs from diabetes educators who can't get their patients motivated to do the right things for their diabetes and health. We have news for you. Motivation is not going to strike you like lightning, and motivation is not something that someone else, nurse, doctor, family member, can bestow or force on you. The whole idea of motivation is a trap. Forget motivation, just do it. Exercise, lose weight, test your blood sugar, or whatever. Do it without motivating then guess what? After you start doing the thing, that's when the motivation comes and makes it easy for you to keep on doing it. Motivation is like love and happiness. It's a byproduct. When you're actively engaging in doing something, it sneaks up and zaps you when you least expect it. As Harvard psychologist Jerome Berner says, you're more likely to act yourself into feeling than feel yourself into action. So act. Whatever it is you know you should do, do it. When Kurt suggested I needed to be intentional about growing, I had thousands of reasons not to do it. I didn't have the time, the money, the experience, and so on. I had only one reason to do it. I believed I should do it because I hoped it would make a difference. The certainty didn't feel inspirational, but I started. To my astonishment, after a year of dedicated growth, I started to pass some of my heroes. My reason for putting in the work changed from getting started to staying with it, because it did make a difference. After that, I didn't want to miss a single day. You may not feel inspired to aggressively pursue a growth plan if you haven't started yet. If that's the case, please trust me when I say that the reason to keep growing far outweigh the reason to start growing. And you discover the reason to stay with growth only if you stick with it long enough to start reaping the benefits. So make a commitment to yourself and start and stick with it for at least 12 months. If you do, you will fall in love with the process and you will be able to look back at the end of the year and see how far you've come.
All right. Now get this. The comparison gap. Others are better than I am. Fairly early in my career, let me go this way. I attended an idea exchange with 3 other leaders in Orlando, Florida. I went because at the time I realized that I needed to be exposed to bigger and better leaders outside of my own small circle. At first, when I arrived, I was intimidated. As we talked and shared ideas, it became very quickly that I was not in their league. Their organizations were 6 times the size of mine, and they had many more and much better ideas than I did. I felt like I was in over my head and trying to swim. Despite that, I was encouraged. Why? Because I discovered that great men were willing to share their ideas, and I was learning so much. You can learn only if others are ahead of you. The first 10 years that I was intentionally pursuing personal growth, I was always behind trying to catch up. I had to get over the comparison gap. I had to learn to become comfortable with being out of my comfort zone. It was a difficult transition, but it was well worth it. Number 8, the expectation gap. I thought it would be easier than this. I don't know any successful person who thinks growth comes quickly and climbing to the top is easy. It just doesn't happen. People create their own luck. How? Here's the formula. Preparation, which is growth, plus attitude, plus opportunity, plus action, doing something about it, equals luck. It all starts with preparation. Unfortunately, that takes time. But here's the best news. As Jim Rohn said, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. If you want to reach your goals and fulfill your potential, become intentional about personal growth. It will change your life. Making the transition to intentional growth. The sooner you make the transition to becoming intentional about your personal growth, the better it will be for you. Because growth compounds and accelerates if you remain intentional about it. Here's how to make the change. Ask the big question now. The first year that I engaged in intentional personal growth, I discovered that it was going to be a lifetime process. During that year, the question in my mind changed from how long will this take to how far can I go? That is the question you should be asking yourself right now. Not that you will be able to answer it. I started this growth journey 40 years ago and still haven't answered it. But it will help you set the direction, if not the distance. Where do you want to go in life? What direction do you want to go? What's the farthest you can imagine going? Answering those questions will get you started on the personal growth journey. The best you can hope to do in life is to make the most out of whatever you've been given. You do that by investing in yourself, making yourself the best you can be. The more you've got to work with, the greater your potential and the farther you should try to go. As my dad used to say to me repeatedly when I was a kid, to whomever much is given, much shall be required. Give growing your best so you can become your best. Give growing your best so you can become your best. All right, go ahead.
2. Do it now. In 1974, I attended a seminar at the University of Dayton where W. Clement Stone spoke on the subject of having a sense of urgency. Stone was a business tycoon who had made his fortune in insurance. His session was titled Do It Now, and one of the things he told us was this. Before you get out of bed every morning, say, do it now 50 times. At the end of the day, before you go to sleep, the last thing you should say, Do it now 50 times. I'm guessing there were about 8,000 people in the audience that day, but it felt like he was talking to me personally. I went home, and for the next 6 months, I followed his advice. The first thing every morning and the last thing before I went to sleep, I repeated the words, "Do it now." It gave me a tremendous sense of urgency. The greatest danger you face in the moment is the idea that you will make intentional growth a priority later. Don't fall into that trap. Recently, I read an article by Jennifer Reed in Success. She wrote, "Can there be a more insidious word, later, as in, I'll do it later, or later I'll have time to write that book that's been in my mind for the past 5 years, or I know I need to straighten out my finances, I'll do it later." Later is one of those dream killers, one of those countless obstacles we put up to derail our chances of success. The diet that starts tomorrow, the job hunt that happens eventually, the pursuit of the life dream that begins someday, combined with other self-imposed roadblocks and lock us on autopilot. Why do we do this to ourselves anyways? Why don't we take action now? Let's face it, the familiar is easy. The uncharted path is lined with uncertainties. By starting to read this book, you've already begun the process. Don't stop there. Keep taking more steps. Pick a resource that will help you grow and begin learning from it today. 3. Face the fear factor. I recently read an article on fears that keep people from being successful. The following 5 factors came into play: fear of failure, fear of trading security for the unknown, fear of being overextended financially, fear of what others will say or think, fear that success will alienate peers. Which of those fears most impacts you? For me, it was the last one, alienating my peers. By nature, I'm a people pleaser, and I wanted everyone to like me. But it really doesn't matter which fear affects you the most. We all have fears. But here's the good news. We also all have faith. The question we have to ask ourselves is, which emotion will I allow to be stronger? Your answer is important because the stronger emotion wins. I want to encourage you to feed your faith and starve your fear. You want me to keep reading?
I'll go ahead and get that. All right. Number 4, change from accidental to intentional growth. People tend to get into ruts in life. They get in an easy groove and they don't try to break out of it, even when it's taking them in the wrong direction. After a while, they just get by. If they learn something, it's because of a happy accident. Don't let that happen to you. If that is the attitude you developed, then you would do well to remember that the only difference between a rut and a grave is the length. How do you know if you've slipped into a rut? Take a look at the differences between accidental growth and intentional growth. Accidental growth plans to start tomorrow. Intentional growth insists on starting today. Accidental growth waits for growth to come. Intentional growth takes complete responsibility to grow. Accidental growth learns from mistakes. Intentional growth often learns before mistakes. Accidental growth depends on good luck. Intentional growth relies on hard work. Accidental luck quits early and often. Intentional growth perseveres long and hard. Accidental growth falls into bad habits. Intentional growth fights for good habits. Accidental growth talks big. Intentional growth follows through. Accidental growth plays it safe. Intentional growth takes risks. Accidental growth thinks like a victim. Intentional growth thinks like a learner. Accidental growth relies on talent. Intentional growth relies on character. Accidental growth stops learning after graduation. Intentional growth never stops growing. Eleanor Roosevelt said, one's philosophy is not expressed best in words, it is expressed in the choices one makes. In the long run, we shape our lives and we shape ourselves. The process never ends until we die, and the choices we make are ultimately our own responsibility. If you want to reach your potential and become the person you were created to be, you must do much more than just experience life and hope that you learn what you need along the way. You must go out of your way to seize growth opportunities as if your future depended on it. Why? Because it does. Growth doesn't just happen. Not for me, not for you, not for anybody. You have to go after it. And then there's the application questions.
Yep, Baroni.
All right. First impression, first thoughts. Any?
Not right off the top of my head, let's see. There could definitely be, ooh, like automatically reading it, like thinking about implementing those things and doing those things seems like a lot of work. You know, thinking about it, being mindful of even just like, the fear factors and everything. To me, it seems like a lot of work,
Yeah.
which I'm sure it's something that, if you do it every day, it will get easier. But that's where my initial thoughts are right now.
Nice. Well, yeah, I think about the idea of sometimes, so I know like I'm running, when I run, I'm like, do I want to improve or I just want to like, is the goal improvement or is the goal just like showing up every day? And sometimes there's areas in my life where I'm like, depending, I don't know if I have purposeful goals to get faster, which I think I'm okay with. But there's other areas in my life that I like to write more books or achieve more things or grow my business or do other things. So I think growth is something that appeals to me. If you think about what areas of your life do you actually want to grow, do you want there's a ceiling on it right now. Which areas of your life do you actually want to raise the ceiling? I thought about that. There's a number of areas in my life that go, you know what, I want that to get better and stronger. So anyway, looking forward to revisiting this book and going through it. Should we each of us reread chapter 1 on our own and pull out quotes and then maybe any relevant things that you read on Reddit or I read on Twitter? Should we go back over chapter 1 or should we start next week on chapter 2?
It's completely up to you. I'm all for it either way.
Okay. Maybe let's do chapter 1.
Okay.
Next week will be your highlights, anything that really spoke to you, anything that leapt off the page, anything that feel like it was written for you, and then anything that you connected that to what outside of the book that's connecting, whether it's news or current events or Reddit stories or family conversations.
Yeah.
So chapter 1 for next week. All right, cool.
Sounds like a plan.
Any last words for our pod this week? Next week, I probably know the gender of your kid, and I won't reveal it.
We are hoping to know the gender. Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, we'll plan for Tuesday, next Tuesday, 12 p.m. Central Time. We'll see you then. Thank you, everybody.